To my daughter Brittany, I leave the entirety of my estate, valued at $2.4 million, contingent upon one specific condition. She must submit to a DNA test to prove she is my biological child. Mr. Henderson read my father's final insult without looking up from the paper. Across the table, my sister Selena didn't look sad. She laughed. She actually laughed. She pulled out her phone, hit record, and pointed the camera right at my face, waiting for me to break down. My mother, Cynthia, covered her mouth in fake shock, but I saw her eyes scanning the documents, already calculating how to spend the money she thought I was about to lose. They thought this was the moment I was destroyed. They saw me trembling and assumed I was terrified of the truth. But under the table, my hands were steady. I wasn't shaking from fear. I was shaking because I knew something they didn't. I wasn't the one walking into a trap. They were. Before I show you the piece of paper that destroyed my mother's life in 3 seconds, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? And have you ever had a secret that could burn your whole family down? Mr. Henderson, I stammered, letting my voice crack just enough to sound pathetic. Can we handle this without the test? I don't want to drag Dad's name through the mud. I slumped in my chair, wrapping my arms around myself like a frightened child. To them, I looked like a woman on the verge of losing everything. They saw a 30-year-old failure who had spent the last 5 years wiping up vomit and changing adult diapers. They didn't see Brittany, the forensic accountant who had spent a decade auditing shell companies and hunting down hidden assets for federal indictments. They saw the mask, not the auditor. Selena snorted, the sound sharp and ugly in the quiet room. Oh, please. Now she cares about Dad's name? You're just terrified because you know the truth. You're a genetic error, Brittany. A bad investment Dad finally decided to write off. I looked at my mother, pleading with my eyes. Mom, please. We don't need to do this. The estate is worth $2.4 million. Let's agree to split it 3 ways. We burn the test. We all walk away with $800,000. That's enough for everyone. It was the perfect bait. I offered them safety. I offered them a guaranteed win. A rational person would have taken the money, but I wasn't dealing with rational people. I was dealing with narcissists who had spent decades building a throne on top of my back. This is what we in the industry call the sunk cost of greed. It wasn't just about the money anymore. For 30 years, Cynthia and Selena had invested everything into a specific narrative, that they were the royalty of this family, and I was the servant. To accept a settlement, to accept an equal share, would mean admitting that I was on their level. It would mean liquidating their ego, and that was a cost they simply couldn't afford to pay. They didn't just want to win. They needed me to lose. Cynthia looked at me, and for a second, I saw the greed warring with caution. Then, she leaned over to Selena. She whispered loud enough for the microphone on the table to catch it, but soft enough that she thought I couldn't hear. Sign it. James was in a full leg cast in the hospital for 6 weeks the month she was conceived. It is physically impossible that she is his. She's bluffing. That was her ace in the hole, a false memory, a biological fact she had convinced herself was true to sleep at night. She wasn't gambling. In her mind, she was betting on a fixed race. Cynthia straightened up, her face hardening into a mask of superiority. Absolutely not. Your father's wishes were clear. He wanted his biological family to inherit. If you aren't his, you don't deserve a penny. We reject your offer. Then what do you want? I asked, looking down at my hands to hide the calculation in my eyes. We want a stipulation, Selena said, leaning forward, her eyes bright with malice. Winner takes all. If the DNA test proves you aren't Dad's, you get 0. You move out of the house immediately. You leave us alone forever, and the entire $2.4 million goes to us. Mr. Henderson looked at me over his glasses. Brittany, do you understand what they are asking? If you sign this, and the test is negative, you leave with nothing. I took a shaky breath. If that is what it takes to prove I'm his daughter, fine. I'll sign. Mr. Henderson typed up the stipulation. The printer whirred in the corner, the only sound in the room. He slid the paper across the mahogany table. Cynthia signed it with a flourish. Selena signed it with a jagged, aggressive scrawl. I picked up the pen. My hand trembled, but not from fear. It was the vibration of a trap snapping shut. I signed my name. "It's done," Cynthia said, reaching for the folder. "Now, when can we schedule this test?" I set the pen down. The act was over. I stopped slouching. I stopped shaking. I looked up, and for the first time that day, I let them see my real eyes. Mr. Henderson pressed his notary stamp onto the document. The thud echoed off the glass walls like a gavel striking a block. The contract was legal, binding, irreversible. While the ink dried, I looked across the table at Selena. She was checking her reflection in the darkened screen of her phone, adjusting a stray lock of hair. She looked perfect, rested, expensive. She looked like someone who had spent the last 5 years in Tulum and Bali curating a feed of wellness retreats and positive vibes while I was drowning in a sea of antiseptic and bodily fluids. They say you can't put a price on family duty. I disagree. As a forensic accountant, I put a price on everything. I closed my eyes for a second, and the smell hit me. Not the leather of the law office, but the phantom stench of bleach and decay that had clung to my skin for 1,800 days. I remembered the 3 a.m. alarms to turn my father so he wouldn't get bed sores. I remembered the sound of the feeding tube pump, a rhythmic mechanical click that became the soundtrack of my insomnia. I remembered the way he would scream at me when the dementia took hold, calling me a thief, a stranger, a burden, while I wiped the vomit from his chin. Where was Cynthia then? She was at wellness seminars in Sedona, spending Dad's pension on crystal healing to protect her energy from his illness. Where was Selena? She was posting throwbacks of Daddy's Girl on Instagram for likes, captioning them with heart emojis, while I was arguing with insurance adjusters about the cost of adult diapers. They looked at me now, with my slumped shoulders, messy bun, and dark circles, and they saw a defeat. They saw a woman who had wasted her prime years being a maid. They didn't understand that I hadn't just been cleaning up messes. I had been auditing them. I didn't quit my job as a senior forensic auditor at a top-tier firm because I was soft or because I had nothing else going on, as Dad liked to tell the neighbors. I quit because I knew that if I wasn't there to watch the money, Cynthia would have drained the accounts dry before the cancer even took him. I stayed to protect the asset. I stayed because I knew that one day, this moment would come. I looked at my mother. She was smiling now, a small, tight expression of victory. She thought she had just secured her retirement. She thought the years of neglect, the years of treating me like hired help she didn't have to pay, were about to pay off. They didn't know that every time they mocked me for being single, for living in that house, for having no life, I was adding a line item to a mental ledger. Every insult was a debit. Every missed birthday was interest accrued. This $2.4 million wasn't a gift. It wasn't a windfall. It was back pay. It was severance. It was the invoice for 5 years of slavery, and I was finally ready to collect. "Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice dropping the tremble, smoothing out into the cool, professional tone I used to use when testifying in federal fraud cases. "I don't need 7 days." Cynthia frowned, confusion flickering behind her eyes. "What do you mean?" "I mean I don't need a week to get a DNA test," I said, reaching into my tote bag. I prepared for this. I reached into my bag, but I didn't pull out a tissue to wipe away my tears. I pulled out a heavy, cream-colored envelope sealed with red security tape. I slid it across the mahogany table until it rested directly in front of Mr. Henderson. "Sir," I said, my voice steady and devoid of the tremble I'd faked 5 minutes ago. "This is a certified medical examiner's report, notarized this morning at 8 a.m. It contains a comprehensive genetic analysis comparing my DNA, Selena's DNA, and the post-mortem samples taken from my father during his autopsy." Mr. Henderson looked at the envelope, then at me. He saw the change. The slumped shoulders were gone. The fear was gone. He picked up the envelope, slit the seal with his letter opener, and pulled out the documents. The room was silent, save for the hum of the air conditioning. Cynthia's smile faltered. Selena lowered her phone slightly, her brow furrowed in confusion. They were waiting for him to dismiss it, to tell me I was desperate. Mr. Henderson read the first page. He flipped to the second. Then he slowly took off his reading glasses and looked at my mother. It wasn't a look of sympathy. It was a look of professional horror. That look was all the validation I needed. "Now," I said, standing up. Let me show you what he's reading. I pulled my laptop from my bag and connected it to the cable in the center of the table. The large screen on the wall flickered to life. Slide 1, I said. The screen displayed a simple bar graph. Subject A, Brittany, 99.998% paternal match to James. I am James's biological daughter, I said, looking directly at Selena. The test you demanded, I passed. The genetic error, that wasn't me. Cynthia let out a breath, a high, thin sound. She thought she was safe. She thought the worst-case scenario was that we split the money. She had forgotten the contract she just signed. Winner takes all. But Dad didn't just want to know if I was his. I continued, clicking the next key. He wanted to secure the bloodline. So, as his medical proxy, I authorized a full familial comparison. Slide 2. The graph on the screen plummeted. Subject B, Selena, 0% paternal match to James. Selena dropped her phone. It hit the table with a crack. What is this? Cynthia whispered, her face draining of color until she looked like a wax figure. This is fake. You forged this. Mr. Henderson is holding the certified original, I said coldly. And since you were so confident about Dad's broken leg, let's talk about where Dad actually was 30 years ago. He was in traction. You were working late shifts as a receptionist at the clinic. I clicked the final key. Slide 3. 2 photos appeared side by side. On the left, a candid shot of Selena from her Instagram. On the right, a headshot of a man from a hospital directory circa 1995. Dr. Julian Croft. Cynthia's old boss. The resemblance wasn't just close. It was undeniable. The same hooded eyes, the same weak chin, the same slightly crooked nose that Selena had spent $5,000 trying to fix with fillers. It turns out, I said, my voice filling the dead silence of the room, that biology doesn't care about your narrative, Mom. Selena isn't a Morgan. She never was. And according to the document you just forced me to sign, she inherits absolutely nothing. Fine, Cynthia said, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and panic. She shoved the folder away from her as if it were radioactive. Keep the estate. Keep the house. Keep the stocks. I don't care. She straightened her spine, smoothing the front of her designer blouse, trying to reassemble the mask of the grieving widow. The life insurance policy is separate. It's a $1 million payout. And I am the sole named beneficiary. The will doesn't touch that. Neither does this ridiculous science project. She looked at Mr. Henderson, desperate for validation. Tell her, Charles. The insurance is mine. Mr. Henderson didn't answer. He was looking at me. I let out a low, humorless laugh. It was the sound of a forensic auditor watching a CEO try to shred documents while the FBI is already in the lobby. You still don't get it, do you? I asked, leaning back in my chair. You think Dad requested this DNA test because he doubted me? Mom, Dad knew I was his. He saw his own face in the mirror every time he looked at me. He didn't demand this test to prove who I was. He demanded it to prove who you are. Cynthia's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? The prenup, I said. I read it. Dad couldn't divorce you while he was alive because the prenuptial agreement you signed 30 years ago had no infidelity clause. If he left you, you would have taken half his business and the house. He was trapped. So he built a Trojan horse. I tapped the laptop key again. A new document appeared on the screen. It was a scanned copy of the life insurance policy dated 1994. Dad didn't update his will to hurt me, I explained, my voice clinical. He did it to create a post-mortem legal trigger. See Section 8, Paragraph C. It's a standard moral turpitude clause common in high-value policies from the 90s. If the primary beneficiary is proven to have engaged in deceptive practices regarding the fundamental structure of the domestic union, specifically paternity fraud, the policy is voidable. Cynthia stood up, her knuckles white against the table. You can't prove that applies here. That takes years of litigation. It would, I agreed. If I hadn't already faxed the medical examiner's report and the supplemental DNA analysis to the insurer's Special Investigations Unit at 8:05 this morning. The color drained from Cynthia's face so fast I thought she might faint. I flagged the claim for fraud, Mom, I said softly. The payout is frozen. No one is getting that $1 million today or tomorrow. Maybe never. You reported your own mother? She whispered. I reported a crime, I corrected. Attempting to claim a spousal benefit while concealing paternity fraud is a felony in this state when the sum exceeds $100,000. So here's your situation. The insurance company is going to open an investigation. They will subpoena these records. They will interview Dr. Croft's family. And if you fight this, you won't just lose the money. You will go to federal prison. I slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It was a release of interest waiver. Or, I said, you sign this. You waive your claim to the insurance policy. The money defaults to the contingent beneficiary, the only biological child, me. The investigation stops. You walk away with nothing, but you walk away free. Cynthia stared at the waiver like it was a trap because it was. Mr. Henderson offered her nothing but silence. And Selena sat rigid, eyes fixed on the wall as if she'd already checked out. The room felt smaller with every breath. This wasn't a family argument anymore. It was leverage, and I was the one holding it. Sign it, I said, or I call the investigator back and tell him you're contesting. Her signature came out shaky and reluctant, the pen scratching like a surrender. She slid the paper toward me with trembling hands, suddenly looking less like the woman who ruled the house and more like someone being forced out of it. I'll take the deed now, I said, tucking the waiver away. Mr. Henderson handed me the property file. It wasn't heavy in my hands. It felt final. We're done, I said, turning for the door. You have 24 hours to vacate. Anything left behind gets donated. I honestly thought that was the end. That law and logic had closed the door. But the most dangerous moment with a narcissist isn't when you take their money. It's when you take their mask. Selena moved so fast it barely registered. 1 second she was still. The next she was blocking the exit, back against the glass, eyes wide and unnervingly bright. You think you can just walk away, she whispered. That spike to panic to rage swing has a name, an extinction burst. When control stops working, the person doesn't calm down. They escalate. They don't negotiate. They burn. Move, I said, tightening my grip on my bag. No. Then she smiled, cold, deliberate, like someone committing to damage. She created chaos on purpose, knocking things over, making the room look violent, then raised her phone and went live. Help! Someone call 911, she screamed, pitching her voice into perfect terror. My sister's attacking me. She forged the will. She's hurting Mom. She swung the camera onto me. To thousands of viewers, I looked exactly like the villain. Silent, standing there with a bag, not reacting. Selena framed the mess, her torn appearance, the broken items building a story in real time. Comments flooded in. Outrage multiplied by the second. She wasn't just trying to stop me from leaving. She was trying to erase my future, my job, my credentials, my reputation, because if she couldn't keep the house, she'd settle for ruining the person who could. I didn't grab the phone. I didn't shout. I watched her performance the way an auditor watches someone destroy documents that have already been backed up. Then I cut through it, quiet, precise. Selena, look up. She kept wailing. Look up. I repeated, pointing to the corner near the ceiling. A small dome camera sat there, barely noticeable except for the steady red light. You forgot where we are, I said. This is a deposition room. Probate-grade recording, video and audio. It's been running since we walked in. Her face strained. Her phone lowered an inch. And on her live stream, the tone shifted. People started asking why there was a security camera, why I wasn't fighting back, why her story didn't match my stillness. I turned to Mr. Henderson. Did you make the call? I called 911 the moment things escalated, he said. They're already in the building. Elevators coming up. Selena stumbled backward, trying to salvage it. I'll delete it. I'll end the stream. You can't delete the server backup, I said. And you can't delete what everyone just watched. The doors opened. 3 officers stepped in and took in the scene instantly. The mess, the hysterics, the phone still broadcasting, and me standing still with my hands visible. The lead officer asked what was happening. Mr. Henderson didn't hesitate. He pointed at Selena. She trashed my office, attacked her sister, and is filing a false report on a live stream. I have the security footage ready. Selena tried to pivot shirt, tears, claims. But the officers weren't focused on her performance. They were focused on the device in her hand still transmitting. "Ma'am, put the phone down." "I'm a victim," she shrieked. "My followers are watching." Good, I thought. Let them. They removed the phone, turned her around, and cuffed her. The clicks were loud enough for the live stream to catch. The comments detonated, sympathy collapsing into the internet's favorite sport, turning on a liar. As they walked her out, crying for real now, I approached the officer holding the phone and pulled a final paper from my bag. "Officer, while you process the false report and assault, can you serve this too?" I handed him the eviction notice. "She and her mother are trespassing on my property. I want them removed immediately. 24 hours to collect personal effects," supervised. He read it once and nodded. "We'll handle it." I leaned toward the phone on the table, still hot, still live, and spoke calmly, just for the audience. "Broadcast over." Then I ended the stream. Cynthia didn't leave like a queen. She left escorted, clutching her purse, pleading loudly about her age, her helplessness, her nowhere-to-go story, anything that might regain control. I didn't watch. I didn't feel guilt. I felt what you feel when a long audit finally closes. Exhausted, but satisfied that the numbers finally balance. I drove back to the house, the one I'd maintained while they treated me like a squatter, and walked into silence. No shouting, no demands, no criticism. Just quiet. At the kitchen table, I opened my laptop. The transfer wasn't in yet, but the fraud division notification was. Investigation pending. Good enough. Then I opened the spreadsheet I'd kept for 5 years. Dad's care costs. Every hour of labor. Every bill. Every indignity assigned a market rate. Total, $300,000. I stared at the number. Then I looked around the paid-off house that was finally, legally mine. I highlighted the column and hit delete. Clean ledger. Clean break. They thought I was the maid. They forgot the maid holds the keys to every room. And now I was the only one left inside. If you've ever had to become the villain in someone else's story just to survive your own, share this. You aren't alone.